Welcome to The Pulse on Downtown FTL, presented by the Fort Lauderdale Downtown Development Authority. We are pleased to be coming to you from Sparrow at the top of the Dalmar Hotel and talking about our 2022 office report presented by Colliers. I'm Jenni Morejon, President and CEO of the Fort Lauderdale DDA, a public-private partnership entity that powers the experience, prosperity, and growth in downtown Fort Lauderdale. To start things off, I'm joined by Ken Krasnow from Colliers International. This is a great partnership we have with our quarterly reports and kicking off this first kind of series where we have some good conversation. Downtown Fort Lauderdale for so long was kind of the best kept secret. It was essentially a central business district on Las Olas with office buildings that were largely built in the late 90s, early 2000s. We've seen our first major Class A office product come out of the ground in maybe a decade. What is that doing for competition for some of the existing buildings? How are they trying to level up to really attract new tenants? And what are those companies looking for in product today?
When companies are thinking about how to bring their workforce back to the office, remember, there was a conversation in the middle of the pandemic, which was, our offices needed it all. I think that the mindset has clearly been set that we are going to have people back in the office, but the type of office, the type of building, the location, all of that is changing because the environment needs to, again, reflect that. Why am I coming to the office to do the work that I could do, in my pajamas, in my bedroom and be just as productive? Sure. So the building, the amenities, the light, the air. I mean, we're sitting in a hotel, but it's an example of, what is attracting people, to want to come there. These office markets need to evolve. Mm-hmm. They need to cater to different demographics.
And it makes for a much more dynamic city.
No
when
question.
You have all of these mix of uses. It's going back to the blurred lines of personal, leisure, work, that experience. You want to have kind of the mix of it all.
I know we're going to talk about this later, but great cities have great neighborhoods that give people that diversity. They have great parks. They have great culture. They have they have all of the things that draw you in, whether you're a tourist going to visit, or more importantly, now you're really treating your office employees like tourists. You need to draw them in.
What are the
amenities? It's not just about work.
Yeah.
It used to be you came to the office because that's where your work was. Mm-hmm. Your work is no longer defined by your office.
So we've often said, capital follows talent. So corporations are looking, where's the talent moving to? Talent is looking at place. Is this a place I want to be? Well, our place continues to need investment. And I think that's what's exciting too. And we can talk about all the different initiatives, improving our parks, our streets, providing better micro mobility options, the hospitality of the retail and entertainment that's coming now with a critical mass of people and workers in downtown. So I think that full cycle really allows us to prepare for that economic investment, new companies coming to town, and a continued reinvestment.
Yeah, it's really been a paradigm shift because it used to be if you wanted to go work for Google, you needed to go out to, the Bay Area. If you wanted to go work for XYZ company, you had to go where they are. Now it's the opposite. Now the Googles are paying attention to where their talent, where there are clusters of talent migrating. And when they see the talent moving into Fort Lauderdale, they're going to say, we need to be there because that's where our talent is.
So those were some great trends about downtown office space, downtown workers that we heard from Ken at Colliers. Now we're going to dive into a conversation with two wonderful friends of mine, but also business owners in downtown Fort Lauderdale. Chris Stegner with Very Big Things and Drew Saito with Locality Bank. We're going to hear from them what it's like to own a business, to work in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and to really be part of this community. Tell us a little bit about the companies that you work for, why you got started and what you're up to right now. Go ahead, Drew.
So Drew Saito, Chief Lending Officer, co-founder of Locality Bank. We're a digital-first community bank based here in Fort Lauderdale. And the reason why we launched the bank here in Fort Lauderdale is because there are actually very few local banks that are still headquartered in Fort Lauderdale It's a community, one of the largest municipalities in Broward County, and Broward County is one of the largest counties in the United States. And we felt that with such a large economic base here, it was important and vital to the economic vitality and the sustainability of this area. With that being said, most of us are here local. Many of us were born and raised here in Fort Lauderdale. Our friends, our families, and all of our business colleagues are based here in Broward County and really largely in Fort Lauderdale.
So you're taking a very kind of tech-forward approach. That's kind of a nice segue into Very Big Things.
I love hearing that. Chris Stegner, co-founder and CEO of Very Big Things. We are a digital products agency, so we help create digital products, largely to shape like the perception of the companies we work with. So you could see like startups we work with, the idea is like make them look like billion-dollar companies, and enterprise companies we work with to try to make them look like as tech forward, cool, and awesome as humanly possible, right? So you could think of bank to make them look like truly amazing, right?
Yeah.
I think the question was like, why Fort Lauderdale, right? And you had a great reason for that. I have like the complete opposite, which is like I moved to Fort Lauderdale 15 years ago.
Where'd you move from?
Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was
Okay.
like, where's their sunshine? Where's their beaches?
Yeah.
Where's their good
Very
taxes?
lifestyle-centric. Yeah.
All of these things. Warm water. Like when I found out the ocean was warm here, I'm like, sold. That's where I'm going. And then when we went to start Very Big Things, I mean, we're trying to be one of the top digital products agencies literally in the world. And Fort Lauderdale 5 years ago was like the place that made the least amount of sense for a top digital products agency in the world to be headquartered.
So it wasn't about a big fish in a small pond. You were kind of like the only fish in a small pond.
Yeah, and I mean, we're working with people all over the US as well. So it's like, for us, there's a lot of, why are you doing this here? And we're like, because we love Fort Lauderdale. Like, I just love living here, so we'll just make it work. And now, as you can imagine, the last like 2 or 3 years, all of tech is finding its way here. And everybody's like, you're so smart. Like, how did you predict this was going to happen? And it's like, we didn't. We just liked it here. And now we're lucky.
That's great.
I said, you had a good reason. I just happened to be here and I was stubborn.
Yeah.
Well, you worked for several banks before you started with Keith at Locality. Banks seem like such a traditional industry, and they are, and they're
Right.
so critical to small businesses, big businesses. But with a local presence, we've never really seen a lot of that with a digital focus. What was the vision behind that, and what kind of clientele are you serving here in Fort Lauderdale?
The family-run business, the entrepreneur, the person that has to make payroll, every 2 weeks and needs a local banking partner. And the other thing that we underscore is that all the decisions are made here in Fort Lauderdale. The majority of the banks that operate here in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County, they're headquartered outside of Florida, North Carolina, California, New York. So in a way, we ask people to look at it from the standpoint, how do you feel that your banking decisions are made not from your local community? And I think once you pitch it that way, and within that prism, it's like very, it's an easy sell to customers and investors. We are working, our temporary quarters are at General Provisions in downtown Fort Lauderdale. And so we're running close to $100 million asset bank out of a co-working space, which for a lot of people, it's difficult to kind of wrap your mind around until you come visit us. We do have a physical office, but we're probably one of the only banks, I don't know, in the Southeast United States, maybe even in the country, that is actually able to launch in a co-working space. It's basically like a locally owned WeWorks.
So tell me a little more, Chris, about your physical location, but also what it's like in your office in terms of your team, remote, who's in person. We met in Flagler Village. You're just a little north, I believe, in Progresso now.
Yeah. I was looking in Flagler to get our new office space. And I just happened to pull through Progresso and see this beautiful building with, it was like a fishbowl, just glass on each side and 25-foot ceilings. And I was like, I have to be inside that place. We've fallen in love with the Progresso. Honestly, that whole area it's funny, in 12 months, you can just see the change that's happening there. New restaurants are popping in left and right. And I think it's going to be one of the cool up and coming spots.
So what'd your team think when you found this building? Were they kind of like, where are we going? Or now they're seeing that, vibrancy come in and they want to be in the office? What's going on there?
Yeah, no, I mean, they honestly, everybody on our team loved it. I mean, the office is beautiful. We have like a front yard, courtyard kind of fenced area, backyard one too. So we have these huge garage doors we open up and people can go outside. And,
very cool.
So it's, everybody like loves the space. As far as people coming in, we have a unique situation. Like we're like a creative group of people, and I don't know, when you're built like us, you love hanging out with other creative people, and they're hard to find. Yeah. So the second that we started saying you can come back into the office, people just started showing up just because they're like, I want to hang out with these cool people all day, every day. I don't want to be at my house. Yeah. So now we do massages once a week. We do lunches once a week. We do like just fun activities, and it seems like everybody's coming in at least 1 or 2 days a week. Okay. With probably the majority there every day. But
so we heard earlier from Ken that amenities matter. This indoor outdoor kind of a South Florida lifestyle, but also the type of services that you give, the perks for employees. But it really sounds like it comes down to culture too. So tell us a little bit more about what your team does, what products you provide, and how the culture around that really grows.
So what we do is we build digital products. Digital products are, high-end apps, web applications, any type of digital experience that an end user would interact with. And we're on like the absolute kind of tip of the arrow, you could say, of that field. So we're creating some of the best for companies all across the U.S., even internationally as well. So for us, talent is a huge part, and almost all of our creative team is based here in Fort Lauderdale. And we were worried that might be a problem, but it hasn't been at all. Like we've got just such amazing people. People who come down from SCAD, come down into this area. People come up from Miami. Luckily, we're in a spot where with the transit and so forth, people can come from Miami. You at the Bright Line, people come from West Palm. So we've been successful in that realm of being able to like create industry-leading products with the talent found here, if that makes sense.
How do you see the growth of the city being on this kind of persistent upward path with the kind of growth that you're experiencing in your companies? Do they match? Do we need to accelerate how the city's changing, or are they kind of working harmoniously?
You want to take first stab?
Yeah, so I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, so this change has been happening like in front of me for a really long time. Fort Lauderdale growing up, as you know, like you've been here a while now, this Fort Lauderdale used to be a little bit of a sleepier kind of beachside city town. And like
that's because we're like the post-'80s children. We didn't see the spring breaks times when I'm sure folks never said it was sleepy. But.
Yeah, well, but now we're becoming a city where we have large, international companies that are moving offices. We have international flights to Europe and the Middle East coming right out of FLL, one of the biggest ports in Florida. So I think that has really kind of changed the makeup of Fort Lauderdale. And one thing that I'll also note is when I first started working in downtown Fort Lauderdale, everybody would leave at the end of the day. So if you were walking around Las Olas at 8 o'clock at night or on a Saturday morning, it was pretty deserted. But now if you show up at those times, it is very vibrant, like you were mentioning with Ken, because I think there's a lot more people living here.
Absolutely.
You have younger people living in downtown Fort Lauderdale.
So we built Huizinga Park, and the whole intent was to build a stage and a pavilion and a big green lawn. So you kept those people after businesses closed at 5. You brought people in on the weekends, and they said, oh, wow, this is a downtown I want to be in. And that worked really well for quite some time. But I think because of the innovation and the type of companies that are here, the experiences people want, we're realizing we have to really transform our public spaces, that they're just an extension of your cool workforce, your workplace. I mean, they're a way that you can also meet a client in the park and have a cup of coffee, but maybe still go to a movie in the park at night. Well, Drew, Chris, it was really a pleasure to sit here and have a great conversation with you both. Known you for some time, but we're going to keep building great things in Fort Lauderdale. And thanks so much for being part of the conversation today. We're back here with Ken to talk about some key takeaways from our 2022 office report. The report will soon be available on our website at ddaftl.org, and follow us through our social media channels for great updates. Ken, why don't you start out with some of the key takeaways?
The lifeblood of a market is obviously expansion. We want our companies to continue to grow and add employees and so on and so forth. But what really puts a market on the map is new to market activity.
So who are some of those companies that are calling Fort Lauderdale home that didn't 2 years ago?
Well, the best example, and the one that I think gives us the most optimism as we look forward, is like West Marine. So West Marine moved from California, headquarters now on Broward Boulevard. Obviously, it fits in with a big core industry, which what we have here in
and
terms
kind of
of
the brand of Fort Lauderdale.
The brand of Fort Lauderdale, so that fits. But if you dive deeper into the numbers that are in the report, what you're seeing is a big trend of companies and people moving from markets that historically had not considered Florida, let alone, Fort Lauderdale. So again, a big migration of West Coast, California-based companies. And if you really think about it, the lifestyle of a California type company, a California type employee, really fits in well here. So when you look at the report and you see new to market companies, you look at the dynamics of where these companies are moving from. Now again, a lot of headlines were garnered with the New York financial services companies, some of the superstar companies, Ken Griffin.
Did Fort Lauderdale miss out on Wall Street's migration to South Florida?
A little bit.
The feedback from this report is really showing that we as a community have to work harder to attract more companies to provide the product that they want to be in. But we have, I think, the upside. So we may have missed out on Wall Street's migration to South Florida, but are we seeing any silver linings through that in Fort Lauderdale?
Like I said, I think Fort Lauderdale is going to win kind of the slow and steady race, because I think what we're hearing is the companies are making their initial move into the South Florida market, i.e. in Miami or maybe in West Palm Beach. But as they think longer term, over the next 5, 10, 15 years, they're realizing that their cluster of employees are going to be all over this region. Some of them may not even live in Florida, but where can they get to in 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a month when they come in for a big meeting? Obviously, access to the airport in Fort Lauderdale, the centrality between West Palm and Miami. So we missed out on kind of the initial buzz
names,
and the rush and the flashy market announcements. But the behind the scenes conversations that are taking place, if we continue to build the product, the infrastructure, the cultural, the open, everything that we've talked about, if we continue to build those things, downtown Fort Lauderdale will be the long-term beneficiary. Our downtown workforce is getting younger, they're smarter, they're increasingly more family, oriented. Again, back to that balanced life environment. It's livable, it's walkable, it's open space, it's access to the water. So again, that's that cluster of talent that the companies are paying attention to. So those are all very encouraging signs. And why are those people moving here? They're moving here, again, because they see a city that's doing things like Huizenga Park, that's doing things like Holiday Park, that's doing things like Arts Park, that's potentially building a tunnel, that's innovative, that's forward thinking, the soccer stadium. They're seeing a city that is growing
and transforming in front of their eyes.
Investing, right? So all of those things that we're talking about are public investments that that the city is blessed to have that very kind of progressive thinking mentality. People pay attention to that. So now you're seeing in the report the comparison between cities like Austin and Nashville. Again, cities that have got that vibe of excitement, of energy, of progress, that's where people want to go. So I think we've done a great job of attracting that talent, but now we need to do the next step of when the Googles and the Microsofts and the companies of that ilk see their talent here. They need to have a requisite brand of office, which again, a Fat Village, some of the projects that are on the drawing board will help to accommodate, but we need to do more of that.
So a slow and steady approach wins the race.
No question.
We're a downtown that's kind of coming out of its own, really celebrates the diversity, the new people, the new talent, new companies that are coming to town. But we have some work to do. We have to keep growing. We have to keep growing our office product, the quality, the public spaces that we share to keep attracting that talent and really make it this livable place for all. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation, The Pulse on Downtown Fort Lauderdale. Be on the lookout for our 2022 office report, soon to be released on DDAFTL.org.